This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. Consider this your vitamin or supplement for your mind, your heart, and your soul. I'm glad that you have joined us today. Wherever you downloaded this podcast, would you mind subscribing? And if you could leave a rating and write a brief review, that will help people be able to find this podcast. So I would really appreciate if you could do that for us. Today is really kind of getting back to a Leadership 101, but I believe what I would call it is 5 routines you should try, or 5 routines that should become habits in all of our lives. Have you discovered that little things in life really determine our success or lack thereof? It's not just big things that make a difference. It's the small things in life that over a time can really make a large difference. So I just have 5 of them I want to talk with you about today. The first one is what I call the 2-minute rule. And that is anything that comes to my attention, anything that comes across my desk, anything that comes to my email inbox, if a response will take 2 minutes or less, I take care of it right then. Now, if it's going to take longer, I have to find some things, I have to write something, I have to consult with someone else, something that's going to take a couple of steps. I put it in an inbox. Now you can use all sorts of software and apps to help you. One of my favorites is Nozbe, Nozbe. It's a wonderful task management to-do list. It really helps me. It's sort of one of the things that goes together to make up my electronic brain. But if it's going to be an email or a letter or something across my desk that's going to take me more than 2 minutes to get it accomplished, I will put it in that inbox for a segment of time later in the day when I go to clear out that inbox or give assignments or take a few minutes and do some work and research in order to be able to answer or comply with it. One of the things that I used to do when I was starting out as a new leader was I knew what the answer was to the call, to the letter, to the email, to the request, but I didn't want to say no. And I was somewhat concerned about hurting the other person's feelings. And so I would just put it off and put it off. And let me tell you, that's a horrible way to operate. The best way to operate is to do something and to do it now. And you'll be farther down the road as things happen if you keep it to 2 minutes and then just do it now and you won't have to worry about it later. I even purchased an egg timer that has 2 minutes. And so I look at some phone calls, maybe some voice messages that I need to return. And the answer is brief. It's just a matter of carrying on information. If it's at all possible, I will try to text them the answer, especially following that 2-minute rule. But when I call the person and they answer, I turn my egg timer over because it's a brief informational call and will take 2 minutes. Now, 2 minutes doesn't sound like much time sitting here right now talking about it, but if you were to buy an egg timer or set a timer on your computer for 2 minutes and just stare at it, you would find out that you can get a lot done in 2 minutes. 2 minutes is indeed a short interval of time, but if you concentrate, you can get it said, you can get it written, you can get it sent, you can file it away, whatever the little task is, and then you won't have so much to do later when you're batching things. So that's the first routine that should become a habit with you, is in everything that happens to you this day and the rest of the week, if this particular thing can be handled in 2 minutes or less, do it now, take care of it, check it off, and move on to other things. That's my first routine that you should make a habit. The second routine is one that I resisted for many years, and that was come up with an ideal work week template. I think the first one that I ever used, I discovered from Michael Hyatt, and I have it there, and I kind of moved it around. And the reason you need to do that, especially those of us who have no 2 weeks exactly the same, or 1 week will be loaded with meetings, or you may be out of town on this week, and we use the excuse that none of our weeks are exactly alike to just sort of float along. And I think this is a wonderful exercise. Sit at your desk or at the coffee shop or in your favorite chair, wherever it is, and just imagine you were going to live the ideal week. What would it look like? What would be the things that you would attend to? When I do that, there are several things I put in that are important to me. I put in my morning and my evening routine, and I'll mention that a little bit more in a moment. I just go ahead and schedule my gym time. I schedule my exercise time. I schedule my reading time. I even schedule some of the downtime. I now schedule time to record podcasts and to do some research for them. I also put on that ideal template. This is the time in the morning and this is the time in the afternoon where I will batch activities together, and I'll return those calls, the emails. I'll work on that project. I block it out for the amount of time that I'm going to use. And I think I have mentioned I use the Pomodoro technique. I use the timer and I try to have 20, 30, 40, up to 50 minutes of just focused attention on something. Then take an interval, take a little break, and then keep moving on. I put them all on there. Now, many of my weeks are not ideal, and I'm not able to do all of the things that I would do in an ideal week. But you need to understand what are the things that you need to get done in a week. How are you going to schedule for them? Put them in your schedule. And what I have discovered since I have created this ideal work template is that it makes me more aware of this afternoon I need to do this. In the mornings I need to do this. I need to get up and go to the gym. It's like keeping an appointment. And so when you get those, you see how your work flows, and you need to make it flow in a way that is conducive to your energy and to the routines of your life. And so the second of these 5 routines is actually sit down and do the work of what does an ideal work week template look like. If this were my ideal week, these are the things I would attend to. I think it's a marvelous exercise. And I think many of us use as an excuse that because none of our weeks are exactly the same, therefore we can't have a plan and a pattern, and we just sort of float along. The ideal work template really got me focused on the things that I need to do. The third one's one you've heard me harp on lots of times. It's a routine that has become a habit for me. I think you ought to try it, and that is plan your day the night before. Now, I have a confession. When I tell people some of what goes into my planning the night before, many people roll their eyes. I pack my gym bag. I pack it with the clothes that I'm going to change into after I shower when I'm completed at the gym. I have a checklist that I'm going to do. For almost all of my adult life, even on vacation, this is embarrassing to confess, but even on vacation, I lay my clothes out for the next day, the night before. When I was a young person and I'd get a call to go see someone in the hospital in the middle of the night, it's a horrible thing to try to get dressed in the dark. So I started this habit of laying out my clothes. So even when I'm on vacation and there's no need to lay the clothes out, it has become such an ingrained habit that I don't feel like it's time to go to bed till I take care of all of those things. I take a couple of pills. I make sure I put the pills in a certain place. I have something to eat with them. I have my water there. I have water to drink in the morning. I plan that all out. And as you know, I list all of the things that I'm going to do the next day, the night before, and I kind of think and meditate on what do I need to do for each of these events. If there are things that I need to make sure are in my briefcase or my backpack, I put them there. I identify what are my 3 most essential, important tasks for the next day. I write all 3 of them down. I also do praying. I'm a Christian, so I pray before I go to bed, but I plan my day the night before. I never get up in the morning wondering what should I do today. I have a perfect idea of what I'm going to do. It doesn't mean that I haven't had to change. It doesn't mean that there have been unforeseen things happen and things have to change. But one of those priorities that I planned the night before is, what are the 3 most important tasks that I must do this next day? And I am not going to bed until those 3 are done. And as I've told you before, there are some nights I have to stay up mighty late to get that accomplished. So plan your day the night before is the 3rd routine that ought to become a habit for you. The 4th routine that ought to become a habit is have a morning routine. My evening and morning routines sometimes kind of bleed over into each other. My morning routine is to read I read through the Bible every year. I have a Bible passage. I have a prayer time. I go to the gym and exercise and eat a good breakfast. I have a morning routine. I also, at that time, try to make sure before I leave for the office that I have gotten at least one of my most important tasks accomplished. Some days I have 2 of them done. Some I only have about half of one done, but it's some things that you have to really think through. But it just helps my day to go more smoothly if I have already started working on my most important tasks. Because again, none of us know exactly what a day is going to hold. And so we have to do that. I think as you take things that are essential and important in your life and you make them a routine, such as my evening routine of planning the day the night before, the next day the night before, and then having a morning routine. You do it for 30 or 40 days, it becomes an ingrained habit that will help move you along where you need to be. There's a 5th and final routine that should become a habit with you, and that is schedule time for your family and yourself. I have to confess, early on in my leading, I kind of gave myself and my family the leftovers, became convicted by it, and changed. So there was a time that as soon as a new year fell, really I started doing it toward the middle of December, I'd get a calendar for the next year. I knew how many weeks vacation I had. I kind of knew some of the things that was important to my child and my spouse. And I put my vacation time, I put my day off, I scheduled them before anything else got scheduled. I scheduled date night with my wife. I scheduled that I would be at these activities for my child and spend time with him. So what you want to have happen and what is important to you will only happen if you make it happen and if you schedule it. And so just that one act of, before I put any business meeting, any kind of a conference that I was going to go to or even speak at, the first thing that would go on my calendar, and it's still that way to this year, is I know how many weeks vacation and I schedule every one of them ahead of time. It doesn't mean that I haven't had to adjust them and move them because of some family or work situation, but it lets you know and your family know that your family and your own personal development are so important that you can't leave it to happenstance and chance. You have to be diligent and schedule it. So the 5 routines that ought to become habits is the 2-minute rule. If it takes 2 minutes or less, do it now. Create an ideal work week template. What would you do if your week, how will you spend your time during a given week doing all that you need to do? Number 3, plan your day the night before. Number 4, have a morning routine. And number 5, which maybe should really be number 1, schedule time for your family and yourself and put it on the calendar and guard it with all of your heart. You've been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, and productivity. I'm so glad you joined us today. If you would please subscribe, leave a rating, and write a brief review, we would greatly appreciate it. And go and win today and know that you are doing better than you think you are. You are a leader that is and will make a difference. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. This is Dr. Ron signing off.